How often do you feel like life is speeding up? That things are just becoming quicker and quicker, that days are blurring into one another, that emails are stacking up. We are told so often that faster is always better, that productivity and efficiency and speed are the marks of success. But Virginia Woolf, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, one of the greatest writers of all time, and one of my favorite writers of all time, believed that experiences, our deepest experiences, happen only when we resist that rush, when we slow down, and when we pay attention. And in her books, which I'll be talking about today, she shows us how to do that. I'm Professor Alan Johnson, and this is The Thinking Life, where ideas meet everyday life for mind, work, and inner growth. In the 1920s, when Woolf sat down to write Mrs. Dalloway, she was facing similar challenges that we see in our life today. A world that seemed to be speeding up, a world that seemed to be changing day by day, a world that seemed to be radically transformed from the one that she knew from childhood. There were many differences, of course, between Woolf's time and our own, but I think it's useful beginning here that if today we think that life is going faster than has ever happened before and is more terrifying than it ever has been before, we need to remind ourselves that people always believed that. And in Woolf's time, there was a really, really strong sense of that. And in her novel, Mrs. Dalloway, it's, on the surface, it's just a novel on a single day in London. Clarissa Dalloway is off to buy flowers for the party that she's hosting that night. Two of her friends from her teenage years come back to London and she sees them for the first time in a very long time. And meanwhile, on the other side of town, Septimus Warren Smith, recently returned from the trenches of World War I, is walking the same city streets. But Woolf's real subject here isn't really these events or this plot in any real conventional sense. Her real focus was the nature of time itself, not the mechanical ticking of clocks, although we will come back to clocks in a moment, but the very living nature of consciousness and how consciousness is mediated by time. Woolf once described in her oft quoted essay, Modern Fiction, that life, it isn't a series of neat, orderly events. She talked about life as a luminous halo, a semi transparent envelope surrounding us from the beginning of consciousness to the end. Wow. I mean, that the line always really strikes me. And it's such an extraordinary phrase and such an extraordinary concept that it captures life as a halo that's sort of glowing and shifting, and that in order to really see it, in order to really live, we are required to slow down. Woolf sensed, even from the perspective of the 1920s, that increasing speed of modern life, that rush of London buses, the tolling of Big Ben, that endless stream of social obligations. And her fiction, Mrs. Dalloway perhaps in particular, resists that acceleration. It invites us in the same way that it invites and forces its characters to do so. It invites us to pause, to notice, to linger. And if we are to take Woolf seriously, her work can become a guide for us as well in this age of constant notifications and relentless commitments. Woolf draws a really important distinction in her nonfiction writing between what she calls moments of being and everything else. So, most of life, she argued, is lived in a state of non being. Those automatic routines that, eating a breakfast or running errands or exchanging polite words with people around us. How much of our lives are we spent in those sort of moments of non being, those moments that pass without a real trace? But then every once in a while, something breaks through, some sort of sudden moment of intensity, or this realization of clarity, or an experience that makes us feel really fully alive. So at the same time that Woolf was interested in those moments that make us feel really fully alive, James Joyce was also writing about them. He called them epiphanies. Virginia Woolf called them moments of being. And in these moments, that luminous halo of life that she wrote about suddenly becomes visible. Suddenly, a memory surfaces, a fragment of music strikes us in a different way, or the way that light is falling on the pavement, or that, that fallen leaf on the ground can transform into something really quite transcendent. For Woolf, these moments were the very essence of life, and they only come when we allow ourselves to slow down and notice them. And you can practice this in your own life by simply asking, where are my moments of being? Where are the moments when I am truly alive? When I'm out running, or with a friend or partner or loved one, or teaching or writing or practicing a craft or art or hobby or whatever it might be. Pay attention to the next time that something feels unusually vivid. It might be in a moment that we expect, but it might also be in a moment that we don't expect. When we are walking down the road, when the light hits in a very particular way, or the way that a tree moves as a breeze flows through. Instead of rushing past these moments, we need to allow ourselves, train ourselves to lean into observing them, to just stop there for a moment, just for a few breaths. That is Wolf's invitation, because those moments, those epiphanies, are the real point of life. One of the most striking features in the novel Mrs. Dalloway is the repeated chime of Big Ben. And of course, pub quiz trivia here. Big Ben is the bell inside. It was called St. Stephen's Tower in Wolf's time. It's now called Elizabeth Tower. So when I'm saying that, the chiming of Big Ben, I'm literally meaning the bell inside that is chiming. And it interrupts the story throughout this day that Mrs. Dalloway is set on. And it marks that relentless march of mechanical time. It's that reminder, not just to the reader, but to literally all of the characters in the text. All of them hear it, and they all have different responses to hearing Big Ben. It reminds us and them about deadlines and appointments and that insistence that we must always be moving forward. But against this, Woolf's novel is much more concerned with the inner time of consciousness, how our consciousness in one moment might drift to the past or begin to imagine the future, and how one thought just kind of unexpectedly links one from the next, and how an entire lifetime can be compressed into an instant recollection. For Woolf, that inner time is real time, not the strikes of the clock. What would it mean for us then if we loosen our grip on clock time just a little bit? What if we set aside just a little pocket in our days, maybe half an hour, where we don't check the time at all? Or in our age, and this is something Wolf didn't have to contend with, we don't check notifications on our phone at all. What if we set aside an entire day, maybe even once a week, maybe every Sunday, or, if that feels like a challenge for us now, maybe just once a month, or maybe a little mini retreat, where we don't have any watches, any phones, any computers, any screens, where we don't allow ourselves to be controlled by mechanical time. And instead, we see what happens when we give ourselves permission to live our inner time, if only briefly. Again, that is an invitation that Woolf offers to us. our culture tells us so relentlessly that slowness is inefficiency, that if you are slow, you are behind, you are weak, you will miss out. Woolf took a completely different view. For Woolf, in her novels, slowness isn't a defect, but is something that the characters need to learn to connect with. All of the difficulties and challenges that Clarissa Dalloway encounters is from the people around her and aspects of herself not feeling able to connect to the moment, rushing from one thing to a next. And in Woolf's writing, slowing down doesn't mean doing nothing. In fact, it actually means perceiving more. In her 1927 novel, To the Lighthouse, so it came out 2 years after Mrs. Dalloway, there are pages on pages dedicated to just this one dinner party scene when Mrs. Ramsay hosts her big family and all of their extended family friends for a dinner party in their holiday home. Or there might be paragraphs of a single character just looking out to sea or looking at a canvas that they are painting. But then there's this really interesting middle section where a full decade goes by. The death of main characters is reported in small parenthetical asides. Woolf invites us to reflect on how our understanding of the passage of time connects to what we understand is meaningful. And instead of just reframing slowness in our own day, instead of asking, how much did I accomplish? Or how much did I not accomplish? We can ask ourselves instead, did I go deep in at least one area of my life? Did I read one page with full attention? Did I have one conversation with full presence? Did I look at one painting or one face or one tree without rushing past it? That is what Woolf is inviting us to do. And Woolf's insistence on slowing down wasn't only personal, it was also in many ways political. It was resisting the patriarchal medical establishments of her own time. And we can do this today, learning to slow down, to savor the moment, to allow ourselves to experience the beautiful, transcendent unfolding of simple beauty is really a radical resistance against everything that society is telling us to do. So ask yourself, where could I build a small act of resistance in my own life? Maybe it's a slow walk without headphones. Maybe it is cooking without multitasking, just focusing on the food and the flavors and the sensations. Maybe it's just a reading of a poem without reaching for your phone. These are, all of them, small rebellions against speed, and they open the door to a real sense of presence. And if these ideas have lit a fire underneath you and you're interested in exploring more, I will pop a link below to my upcoming Artist's Way Circle, a 12-week journey together in a small group where we explore Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, and how we can develop our creative instincts, because creativity is innately part of all of us. Creativity is not something that is just for the artists, just for the creatives, just for the thinkers. Creativity is part of all of us. But in order to tap into that and to cultivate that creativity, we need to learn how to experience these moments of being that Woolf talked about. So if you want to explore that more, if you want to develop a complete toolbox of ways to approach this and discuss these ideas with others and experience exercises and practices and tools that will fundamentally reshape your perspective on the world, have a look at the link below. We're going to rediscover what Woolf might have called that luminous halo of experience. So, what can Woolf teach us about slowing down? Well, it's the fact that life is not defined by how much we do, but by how deeply we experience it. And her writing reminds us of the difference between the mechanical times of clocks and business and industry, and even the mechanization of mainline religion, as well, and class-based structures and the patriarchy and snobbishness and all of that. She shows us that slowness is not weakness, slowness is resisting all of that. And she models slowness as a radical act, a way of safeguarding our inner lives against the relentless pace of the world outside. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What's one small thing that you are doing to take down the one small rebellion against the ever increasing pace of the world outside? Share it in the comments below, because it's probably going to inspire someone else who's watching. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to The Thinking Life for more reflections like this on that intersection of literature and philosophy and everyday practice. Until next time, stay well and stay mindful. I'll see you then.